Sure.
Marty, we've got a visitor.
Had a visitor.
Yeah, he came. It was brief. It was brief. But boy, were so many people excited. There were a lot of people excited, including, well, yeah, the Liberal Party. They were very excited to meet Donald Trump as he got off the airplane in, where was that? Was it in Calgary?
He got off Air Force One in Calgary. Very impressive, by the way. He gets off Air Force One in Calgary. And then they unloaded, I don't know, 2 or 3 helicopters and then 6 or 7 Ospreys. And from there, they took off all by a helicopter motorcade, call it, to Kananaskis. Like when he travels, man, he travels in style. And I know we're going to talk about how the Liberals were impressed, by Carney, but we were impressed by Trump. I mean, everybody I know was talking about this, like, because we're on the flight path, like the traffic, the money. I mean, the traffic was impressive, like the helicopters and everything. But as I'm looking, all I'm thinking also is like money, lots of money for seven egomaniacs to get together and pat each other on the back about how great they are, which is why I think that's why Trump left.
Yeah, because of how fake these people are. It's unbelievable. They talked crap about Donald Trump for years and years, and then it was the election. It was the election header. That was the big reason for the biggest talking point on the election was who hates Trump more and how.
Yep.
And here they are. Look at that face on LeBlanc. He's just ecstatic. He's so happy to see him. They all were. They were all incredibly happy to see him, including, well, you know him, Mark Carney. It was unbelievably excited to see him. He even expressed it.
You got to play that. You got to play that. One of these at least. Like actually, you got to play them all. Yeah.
It's not about U.S. leadership, and your personal leadership of the United States.
That's groveling, dude. That is not even like just being flattery, like giving flattery. That is groveling. The G7 would be nothing without the United States, especially without you, Donald Trump. This is Mr. Elbows Up. This is the guy. This is the guy.
Yeah, man, we can go all over the place, but let's stay on. I mean, there's so much to talk about. In opening remark there, the one thing that was really cool is when Trump slammed Trudeau and whoever else for banning Russia from the G7. It used to be called the G8, and then so Trump literally said, "You guys kicked them out." Trudeau kicked out Russia, and then Trump said there wouldn't be a war if you guys hadn't done that because.
Wow.
And if I had been like Trump didn't mince words at all. It was, he came. Actually, can you play the other clip, please? Play the one you had beneath there.
The one down here, this one.
It's too short. Maybe it's too.
And to build a better world. And some of you, such as you, Mr. President, have anticipated these massive changes and are taking bold measures to address them. We have to change.
We're taking bold new measures because of Donald Trump and his leadership in the world. Wow, that's a different tune, man. That's a completely different canary than I saw only a month ago.
And so you could read Donald's body language. Donald doesn't like weaklings. He just doesn't, right? People who grovel and suck up to him. He hates suck ups. So he came. Actually, before I get there, I mean, that round table, like the very first opening round table where they're all sitting there and Mark Carney's reading. Mark Carney is out of his league sitting at that table. Whoever wrote his speech for him needs to be fired. And Carney was like, blah, blah, blah. Like, the planet is facing unprecedented threats and this and that and this and that. And I think it's at that moment that Donald Trump sort of like looked at his watch and is like, what am I doing here? Like, what am I doing here? And then he signaled these guys like, we're done. We're going out. We're leaving. Like they lost Donald. They lost Donald almost instantly. And
That's
Donald
hilarious.
Trump. Yeah, and Donald Trump has real problems to solve, and he said what they are, right? Donald Trump right now doesn't give a shit about climate change, doesn't give a shit about He barely cares about world wars. He's got like wars going on around the world. He's got those under control. Donald Trump right now wants to kickstart his economy, bring back America, make them great again, bring industry back to his country, manufacturing, boost his middle class. And he has a plan on how he wants to do it. And he's not interested and he's not interested in anything that the G7 had to offer at this point. Nothing.
Well,
So
they don't
he's
have
like,
anything to
"I'm
offer,
outta
and
here."
that's really
Yeah.
at the end of the day what it is. Like if
Yeah.
they were to turn around and say, you know what, we've made a huge mistake over the past decade plus. We would like to bring back manufacturing to the Western world. We'd like to turn things around and stop with what we've been doing, feeding everything to China and India and all these other places. And we want to come back and we want to put efforts towards bringing back tool and die and all these other industries and all these other things that we should be doing here. Did you see that video recently? It was Smarter Every Day. Do you know that guy, Smarter Every Day?
Yeah.
So he does a video where he's making a brush. It's a backyard barbecue brush, and he tries to make it completely American. Actually, I have a clip from the video.
Wood, the bristles, the glue, the paint, everything to be from the US. Yeah.
Everything to be from the United States. And he puts so much effort into it, but he has to go to all these places where there's guys retiring and they're like, I'm the only tool and die guy in the region anymore. Like we don't do that. Everything just gets shipped off to China. It's crazy. The amount of stuff that's just like we don't even have the capacity for anymore. This video is not about a barbecue brush. Go and buy that barbecue brush to support the guy. That's cool. But it's not about the barbecue brush. It's about the fact that manufacturing has left, but not just the like the factories, like everything that goes before the factories, everything that we need. If anything were to go down and we had to absolutely rely on ourselves, we're at diminished capacity, like completely diminished capacity.
We had a toilet paper shortage during COVID, and not because we didn't have the toilet paper, but because we were importing the tubes that the toilet paper gets wrapped around from China. So it's like, anyways, I don't want to go there, but
no, you're right though. It's crazy.
Yeah, but back to your point. Yes, Donald has a plan. He shows up at the G7. And what do we do at the G7? We invited Modi. Okay, we invited India. I'm surprised we didn't invite China. We might as well have invited China. We invited Brazil. We invited Zelensky so that he could beg for more money. And then we proceeded to talk about, I don't know, climate change and cyber and security and a bunch of whatever meaningless things. And we kind of ignored Donald Trump and his concerns. All we wanted him there for was for some money. And Donald said, nah, I'm out of here. So he left.
Yeah, no, what was the point of bringing Modi anyway? Like, I know Modi's, we want to trade with India, but like, why at the G7?
It's simply we need to fix the relationship with India. I mean, it is complete, like Trudeau completely demolished that relationship, but now's not that you shouldn't have fixed that relationship at the G7. I mean,
no,
and
then they invite him to the G7 and you have Khalistani marches all around the place. Like, that's not helping. That's not helping at all.
I mean, in hindsight, what Carney should have done, but he doesn't golf. But what Carney should have done is should have just invited Donald Trump to Kananaskis and said, let's go golfing, man. Let's go golfing. And then go golfing, and you would have solved all the problems. But Carney can't golf. He looks like shit anyways. So no, it was, so I asked people, I published today a list of things that happened at the G7 commitments, but I asked people online in general, can Joe Public from Canada tell me what they accomplished at the G7?
No,
I can barely say what they accomplished, and I followed it. I have no idea what they did. I have no idea.
And then it's not like they're bragging about what they've accomplished because they really didn't get anywhere with it. So,
yeah.
Well, you know, when governments don't get anything done, that's actually kind of a good thing.
Yeah. Actually, they did one really stupid thing in Kananaskis. They did one really, really stupid thing. They were so worried about bears that they got an army of volunteers to go and destroy the buffalo berry bushes around Kananaskis. So buffalo berries are like this really sour, bitter little red berry. that starts to ripen pretty quickly at this time of year, and the bears love them. I mean, when I go hiking and I see a bush of buffalo berries, I quickly get out of there because bears love to sit in there and just gorge on them. They hired volunteers to go destroy all the buffalo berries so that the bears wouldn't wander in. It was like, when I see that, I'm like, this is our government. You can't hate our government enough, Clyde. You just can't. Like on one minute they're like promoting bears. Hey, we got to save the bears. They're so beautiful. And
we have to live with bears. I live in a community where you have to live with bears. They don't understand how bears actually work. Yeah. You know, bears are the worst parents. They're deadbeat parents. Dad's gone. Dad's gone right away. And mom, what does mom do? The whole time she's rearing her cubs, she's saying, hey, look, this is the perimeter of my territory. Pretty soon you're out of here.
Yeah.
and when she says you're out, you're not coming back. And the problem is when the bears, they become too abundant, there's too many of them, then
they wander out. They
wander into human areas. And then it's like, once you have one that's eating garbage, you're never getting rid of it. They try.
And they're very smart. And mama bear will teach the cubs. And if they find an area with a garbage can or a garbage dump, then the cubs will teach their cubs, will teach their cubs, will teach their cubs. Absolutely. Yeah. So in Kananaskis this past week, they tried to... They did a knee-jerk reaction, and they tried to demolish to wreck a bunch of buffalo berry bushes to protect the members of the G7. I'm so glad it's over. I'm so glad it's over.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So then Trump was on his way out of there, and all hell breaks loose in the Middle East, and now we've got conflicts. And that's not good. There's a lot of people that are criticizing Trump right now for his moves and saying bad move. A lot of the MAGA people, I guess Tucker Carlson had some issues with Trump, and a lot of people they're not completely ditching him, but they're heavily criticizing him for his role in that.
But are they criticizing him for his role or his lack of a role? Because Trump seems to be letting them do their thing, right? He's not totally interfering. Listen, I took a stance on. I took a bit of a stance in the Middle East this week, and I got criticized for taking a stance. So I can imagine Trump. Trump's in a tight spot. If he takes a stance or doesn't take a stance, the only thing that'll work for Trump is if he somehow or other promotes peace. But I think we're beyond peace now. I think we're at the point where we got to let the Middle East fight this out and figure it out. That's kind of, I don't want to get in. And I was uncomfortable. I was reluctant to take a side, but I took a side.
You took a side. You want to explore that? So I have the tweet here. I lost 100 followers because of this post yesterday.
Yeah.
I say we let him finish the job. Call me for the grand reopening 3 years from now.
Yeah. And so, and I guess maybe it's confusing which side I was taking. I'm taking Israel's side with that flag up there. But what I was really wanting to say, and I should have said it more clearly, is this is in relation to Israel attacking Iran. I think Iran is a bunch of nut jobs. Like, I really think Iran, I think the fundamentalists in Iran that are close to having nuclear weapons, they're crazy nut jobs. And that's what I meant when I say finish the job. I guess when I said reopening in 3 years, are we going to people said you're referring to Gaza, I guess. Yeah, I didn't think of it really. I honestly wasn't referring to Gaza in that tweet. I'm referring to Israel needs to clean up the leadership of Iran once and for all, because I think that's literally a terrorist organization as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think the Iranian people are going to sacrifice themselves to protect that leadership. I think that leadership.
Well, I don't think so.
Yeah. So, but like anything else, there'll be victims, and I got accused of being whatever insensitive and not knowing the politics and not understanding what's going on and blah 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 blah. I'm like, guilty of all those things, but it's a tweet. It's a tweet by a guy. It's a tweet by a guy in Alberta.
So the reality of the situation, though, is that Tehran has been, like, the leadership there, the Ayatollahs, have been trying to get their hands on a nuclear weapon for a long time. There's been deals made, proliferation deals. Okay, so how about we give you nuclear supplies so that you can run because they're saying, oh, we want to have domestic nuclear, power. This is what we want to do. Okay, well, we'll refine it for you. We'll ship it to you. Oh, that's not good enough. You have to have a refinery process. Okay, well, let the IAEA in there. This goes for every country that has nuclear power. They let the IAEA in. You have to. I remember when that stuff in Fukushima happened. I was in Japan. The IAEA was in there reporting on every single thing. They were the most reliable source out of everybody that was reporting on the news, because people were saying meltdown and all this other stuff. No, the IAEA was the source to look at. In Tehran, it's like, no, they have not been complying with the IAEA. They have been going way above board, and they've been going to the point where they're refining nuclear material, uranium, beyond what you would use for civilian purposes. And this is alarming.
In secret facilities, underground, 12 miles, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Like, it's not, there's not a lot of transparency with what's going on in Iran.
And so Trump's stance, and I, just take him from what his word is him saying, no, I don't want a prolonged war. We don't want a conflict. We want it to be done. We want it to be finished. No more deals. This is going to be done. And wow, that sounds really, militaristic. It could sound like that. And a lot of people saying, well, this is the Donald Trump that's going to bring World War III, like we said. But look at his record. He's been peace deal after peace deal after peace deal. Sometimes you have to go in hard. I mean, he was talking about Rocket Man last go around, and next thing you know, we don't have, little Rocket Man is no longer a threat because of that. Sometimes you got to talk a big game. Sometimes you got to do this stuff. Now, there's an interesting post from JD Vance on this story, and this is where like, maybe people who are saying Donald Trump's turning to the war side might want to look at this. So he says, look, I'm seeing this from the inside. JD Vance, his vice president.
Yep.
And I'm admittedly biased towards our president and my friend, but there's a lot of crazy stuff on social media. So I wanted to address some of the things directly on the Iran issue. First, POTUS has been amazingly consistent over 10 years that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Over the last few months, he encouraged his foreign policy team to reach a deal with the Iranians to accomplish this goal. The president has made it clear that Iran cannot have uranium enrichment. And he said repeatedly that this would happen one of two ways: the easy way or the other way.
Yeah.
Second, I've seen a lot of confusion over the issue of civilian nuclear power and uranium enrichment. These are distinct issues. Iran could have civilian nuclear power without enrichment, but Iran rejected that. Meanwhile, they've enriched uranium far above the level necessary for civilian purposes. They've been found in violation of their non-proliferation obligations by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, which I mentioned before, which is hardly a right-wing organization. It's one thing to want civilian nuclear energy. It's another thing to demand sophisticated enrichment capacity, and still yet another thing to cling to enrichment while simultaneously violating basic non-proliferation obligations and enriching right to the point of weapons-grade uranium. I've yet to see a single good arrangement for why Iran needed to enrich uranium well above the threshold for civilian use. I've yet to see a single good argument for why Iran was justified in violating its non-proliferation obligations. I've yet to see a single good pushback against the IAEA's findings. Meanwhile, the president has shown remarkable restraint in keeping our military focus on protecting our troops and protecting our citizens. He may decide he needs to take further action to end Iranian enrichment. That decision ultimately belongs to the president. And of course, the people are right to be worried about foreign entanglement after the last 25 years of idiotic foreign policy. But I believe the president has earned some trust on this issue. And having seen this up close and personal, I can assure you that he is the only interested in using the American military to accomplish the American people's goals. Whatever he does, that's his focus. This is big. That's huge. So for all the detractors that are saying, Donald Trump's a war hawk now, and this is great, like all of a sudden, I don't see it that way. I see his eyes on the prize, and you know what, man? Like if Iran is really messing around, it's a case of, you know, fuck around and find out. Sorry,
yeah, and
French.
Yeah,
But
no, and like he's alluding to at the beginning, like why would a nation that's he didn't allude to it, but why would a nation that is so rich in oil and gas want nuclear electricity? Like it's
well, you could say that they want to sell their product and they don't
want to go green.
It.
Maybe they want to go green. Yeah, they want to go net zero. But no, and Trump's not going to send in troops in the ground. I don't think he would. I mean, they'll do very surgical if he has to. But at this point, Trump is not even arming the Israelis or doing anything. He's just letting the Israelis take care of it. And weirdly,
and the most he's talked about military intervention was allowing Israelis to fly American jets and basically giving them the supplies to do the thing. At which point it's like, well, what do you might as well be.
Actually, the Americans have armed everybody in that region. I think the Americans have provided arms almost equally to all parties in that region. You know, Iran flies F-16s and some pretty nice planes that were provided by the Americans at one point.
Well, not the government, by contractors.
Yeah. It is a messed up area, man. It is the most militarized region on the planet, the most unstable region on the planet. It's been like that for 100 years. Like, it's just, I admit, folks, I'm not an expert on Middle East politics, but at this point, my opinion is simply that we keep interfering and we need to let them solve it among themselves. And if it means that that two sides battle and until there's a winner, I'm getting to that point, because it seems that every effort to mediate a peace has failed in the last 30 years, and especially Iran makes me nervous. They make me nervous.
So I'm a peacenik, and like I really like the idea of peace. I think trade is the better option when it comes to conflict, but I'm not a pacifist. I'm not an idiot. Right. And I do believe in just war theory. If you're provoked and you're attacked, I think that you have a justification to go in. But I don't believe in this, like, you know, regime change and long-winded wars and stuff. Go in, win it, get out. That's it. Like, beat the hell out of them. That's what you got. If you've been provoked, do that. And if that's the case, well, that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it's not my favorite topic, but I took a bit of a side and I took a beating for it, and I can understand why Trump's taking a beating. So it's
but you know what, like it comes down to this on a domestic issue, and I think Doug Ford was great for standing up for people to protect their own selves. You know, calling for Castle Doctrine, Marty. Can you believe that's would that be on your bingo card for 2025?
No. And actually, let's talk about it. Then I'll talk about something else that wasn't on my bingo card. But Doug Ford. Well, actually, I only heard it on a periphery. What happened? So there was was this the case related to the what triggered this? What triggered Doug's comments? What actual incident triggered Doug's comments?
So, okay, so that's where it's interesting, right? So before we get into Doug's comments, let's go into what happened to him. It actually came pretty close to home for Doug Ford. Someone tried to jack his car.
Right.
And the police thwarted that. So there's this article from the Western Standard. Ford calls Canada lawless society after mass suspects targeted his home. So they actually went to his place. Ontario Premier Doug Ford accused Canada of becoming a lawless society after 4 mass suspects attempted to steal a vehicle from his Etobicoke home early Tuesday morning. Police arrested all 4 suspects. So they didn't get away with it. They probably got out on bail, and he's pissed about that, which he should be. But I mean, we're talking about the same Toronto that said this, right?
To prevent the possibility of being attacked in your home, leave your fobs at your front door, because they're breaking into your home to steal your car. They don't want anything else. A lot of them that they're arresting have guns on them, and they're not toy guns; they're real guns.
Guess what? Yeah. Maybe people need to have real guns.
Yeah, now, or maybe you guys should go after the illegal gun owners and leave the legal gun owners alone. Yeah. Okay.
This is,
so Doug
this
Ford,
is where this all gets funny. This is all where
Yeah.
it gets all funny. So Doug Ford made a statement, and I'll let you hear this one because it cracks me right up that this is what he had to say right here.
Did you hear about the guy that these thugs came up, ready to steal his car? They're all in their masks and everything. So I guess he was a hunter or something. He shot up in the air. I don't recommend that, by the way, but he gets charged. I got to find out this guy's name and number, and I'm going to hold a fundraiser for lawyer fees for him. He should get a medal for standing up. It's like down in the U.S., we should have the Castle law. Someone breaks into your house, and I know any of these people here, someone breaks into your house and they're coming after your kids and you're coming after your spouse, you're going to fight like you've never fought before. You're going to use anything that you have, be it weapons, baseball bats, knives. You're protecting your family. These thugs shouldn't be coming in there. Did you hear?
No, they shouldn't be coming in there. They should be afraid of coming in there because they don't know what you got. And that's really, they should be afraid. Absolutely.
Yeah, actually, Alberta is the closest province to have a castle law at this point because we've had about 4 cases like that in the last decade that have been that have gone in favor of the people defending themselves. So I'd say that ends up setting precedents. So in Alberta, we've kind of set precedents that you can defend your house. And I know it's still not law, but you know what I mean? Like when 4 different judges rule that, the guy who shot in the air was one example, or the guy who shot somebody on his property isn't guilty, then it starts to set precedent. So I'm glad that some of the politicians are waking up. I mean, it's not funny, Doug, when it affects you, right? I mean, it's all all fun and games when it's my car, and but suddenly when it's yours, it's sad that we need to go after that the politicians need to be affected personally before they finally do something about something.
But it's amazing how little they know about the actual laws, Marty. So the case that he was citing was actually a homeowner from Vaughan, I think Ontario, and he's facing multiple charges after firing a warning shot up in the air at attempted car thieves. Now I'm not going to play the whole thing, but the case is this: the guy had a gun that he didn't even procure legally, so he didn't have the right to, possibly didn't have the right to own this firearm, and he ND'd into the air, like a negligent discharge into the air at these guys that were outside trying to steal his car. Now, anyone that knows firearms safety, that kind of stuff, they know the 4 rules, and one of those 4 rules is know where the trajectory of your the bullets going.
Know what's behind your target, or know the trajectory. Absolutely.
Yes, and this guy negligent discharge in the air, just to scare people off. Like that's fine if you have like a starter pistol, you know what I mean, for starting like races with blanks in it. But if you've got a real gun, you can't just go firing that into the air, and you should always only ever fire it when necessary. This is
actually didn't a bunch of recent immigrants do that in BC? Didn't was it Brittany that had broke that story last year?
I don't think they were NDs. I think they were actual shots at the people, but they didn't hit.
Yeah. Oh wow, crazy. Yeah, no,
but
it's
if you ever have to discharge a firearm, do not tell the police that you gave a warning shot.
No, you have to make it look like you were absolutely threatened, so you need to go center mass.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that I not recommended. Anyway, this guy, he's getting all kinds of firearms charges, which he's gonna end up going through court, a ton of court, all this other stuff. While the people that went to steal his car are gonna be out on bail.
Yeah, he needs to hire Ian. What's Ian's last name?
Runkle. Ian Runkle.
Yeah. And then he'll get him out. Actually, Ian doesn't get you out if it's actually that's the kind of case that's right up Ian's alley, I think. Or Ian's more the guy you call if the police confiscate some firearms because at a roadside check stop or something because they were improperly stored in your car or whatever. That's who you call Ian. If you're shooting in the air, you might want to call a different lawyer.
Yeah, it's never good. It's never good.
That reminds me of that video you posted last week, and I think I posted it again. Remember that guy at that party dancing with the 9mm and just shooting it? If I saw a guy doing that at a party, I would have been like, "Holy smokes!" What? And I mean,
I get the hell out of there right away.
Yeah. I actually, I'm getting ready. I do this. I'm a range officer, so you know, right? I'm sure you knew that, but I don't do it more anymore. But when I used to compete, we all had to go become range officers because about every 10th competition, you can't compete. You end up volunteering to be an officer, a range officer. Anyways, and that's one of the things we're highly attuned to is during shooting competition, if you sweep a part of your body or if you cross the 90-degree, I'm immediately going to whistle, tap you on the shoulder and tell you to stop. And then you're disqualified for that day, for the event that day. And it's very harsh, but it's part of the safety and it happens to everyone. And it happened to me a few times. It's very frustrating when you get disqualified, but in the heat of moment when you're competing, we used to set up courses.
And that's just going beyond 90 degrees?
Yeah. And we used to set up courses with little traps like that to try and get the guys and disqualify them. I remember one guy did a really clever job one time. He had swinging doors. And it's like, how do you open the door and shoot through the door? Well, you can do it properly. You open the door and then you aim through and shoot. But almost 50% of the competitors that day in that event swept themselves, which means that they were pushing with one hand. And while they were pushing with one hand, their hand was going in front of their gun. And guy after guy after guy was getting disqualified. Even when they knew not to do it, it was like, anyways, it's interesting topic. Yeah. Don't shoot in the air.
And don't shoot yourself.
No, and don't shoot yourself.
Don't flag yourself for other people at the range with the muzzle. That's a thing. I put this one out there this week. I said, you may know what trade this is, but name the discipline. And nobody got it.
Let me reread that. Name the trade, but name the discipline? The overall discipline, like your discipline, or the discipline that you're showcasing with a rubber glove and an impact in your hands?
It's trigger discipline. That was the one.
What? Trigger discipline. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's it. If you're into shooting, you always practice trigger discipline wherever you go. You never put your finger on.
Yeah. Now that trigger or that's a big handle, but even your trigger discipline there with some range officers I know would still disqualify you for that because they want to see light past the trigger. So the trigger guard in front of your trigger, they don't want to see the finger in like parallel with the trigger. They want to see light. And, wow. Some guys are very fussy that way, but trigger discipline. Got it.
Gotta be fussy though. Gotta be fussy. Safety. Yeah. It takes one time to not be safe, and then.
But your trade is officially what? Automotive technician, or what do you call yourself? Automotive technician. Yeah.
Automotive service technician. Yeah.
Not grease monkey.
No, we've graduated past that. We haven't compartmentalized the trade yet, which I think some countries have done that. You can be an automotive electrician, an automotive this or that. No, we have to be everything. We have to be good at everything. Or else
I always bug my buddy Norman by saying not all monkeys are mechanics, but all mechanics are monkeys. But anyways, he gets pissed off when I tell him that.
Oh, well, that's a good way to do it. And hey, I just wanted to remind people, because people probably don't even know this. If you're using the mobile version of YouTube, check out the new feature that's out. I'll just open this up. If you go to the channel, you can see the visit community section on it's only on the mobile apps, but you guys can post there now. So this is like a new feature that YouTube just rolled out. So go check it out. I'd love to see people post your memes, post whatever you want. You can post all kinds of stuff in there, and it's now like a community thing. So it's part of the YouTube channel. So go check that out. Unfortunately, it's only on mobile for the time being, but they might roll it out for other stuff later. That's just YouTube's getting better all the time.
Yeah, actually, this whole chat we just had about firearms reminded me of a tweet. I think it came out yesterday or the day before. Did you see somebody? The Toronto Police Department You know, when the Toronto Police Department, whenever they confiscate firearms in during a commitment of a crime, they post pictures of it on their on their link, right, on the Toronto Police Department. And yesterday they posted a picture of a firearm that is illegal in so many ways. Like, it's crazy, right? Like, it was modified to be automatic. It was a short barrel handgun. It had a high capacity magazine, like blah, 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 blah. And a few people commented like, maybe, you know, this is proof that the laws you have don't work. Like, there's nothing legal about that gun. And every law that the Liberals have passed recently is going after legal firearm owners and ignoring, you know, if their laws were working, there wouldn't be those things on the street. But
that's right. They wouldn't exist, but you can get your hands on them. You just can't if you're a law-abiding citizen.
That's right.
That's it.
And so anyways, hey, what else we're going to talk about? Can we talk about I got a couple
other things that they're banning.
yeah, let's talk about that. That's a good.
Yeah, so this is coming up next year. They're going to ban gasoline and diesel engines. Now, it's not an all-out ban just yet. They're gonna wean you into only being electric, and it's gonna take several years. But it starts off with a mandate that every manufacturer that sells in Canada has to sell 20% of every vehicle that goes out. So what's that? 20%? That's
it's about we sell about 4 million cars a year. So 20% would be whatever, 800,000 cars.
Yeah. So for every 2 cars you can sell 8 gas and diesel trucks and cars.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen immediately? It's going to turn into a quota system. That's exactly how that works. Yeah.
The provisions start in 2030, but they go to almost full zero by 2035. Like no gasoline vehicles, especially in the small commercial market, right? What the Liberals want to do is they want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and they realize that they can't do it by simply going after industry, because like 50% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions comes from the transportation sector, and that's you and I, man. That's people driving cars and planes and going on boats and flying. And so if they want to meet their targets, they have no choice. They have to go after the transportation sector and the consumers. And at first they're going to go after mid-size commercial vehicles like minivans and stuff like that, like the Amazon vans. They're going to try and force Amazon to be mostly electric, but they're going to a pretty solid, no gasoline vehicles by 2035 to be sold new. So they'll be, anyways.
It's a used ones, but as soon as that comes, it's like how long before they outlaw older vehicles, and then there's like a cutoff, and you can't, and then it moves up and up, and then that's it. They try to ban all these older vehicles.
It's a bad law, because I tweeted about this morning. It's a bad law for the EVs have already peaked. So in terms of sales of EVs in this country, it never even hit 20%. Never even close. It came close to 20% in Quebec, but like electric vehicle sales in Alberta and Saskatchewan are like 2%. Like nobody buys them here.
It peaked at like 23 in British Columbia because there's a lot of fart sniffers, and like I make fun of it. Like electric cars are good and they work for some people, and that's fine. But it should be voluntary. You buy it. Sure. You buy it because you like it.
So they peaked in terms of personal sales in the last little while. Donald Trump announced that he's removing subsidies for EVs. Some manufacturers,
and the EV mandate's gone. They just got rid of it.
Yeah. Some of the manufacturers like Ford and Honda and a few others have pretty much gotten out of the market. I mean, Ford was going to do the Ford Lightning, the F-150 Lightning. That's gone. That never sold. So they're back to they abandoned that one, and they're retooling.
Toyota was one of the first. Toyota was one of the first to abandon EVs altogether. Yeah, and they said no, hybrid's the way to go. Like use the EV technology, but smaller battery banks, ICE engines, and just go for it, right?
Yeah, and so there's a few other things, and so but the Liberals were asked about that, and about their bill that they passed several years ago. And they insisted on keeping it. And the Conservatives presented a motion yesterday to get the Liberals to reverse this policy, and the motion got defeated. So the Liberals and the Bloc Québécois got together and defeated this motion, and are keeping this policy in place.
So this, I think it's it sounds like a stupid move, but I think it's a good move politically.
Well,
because this is going to be very unpopular when it gets implemented.
Oh, it's going to be extremely unpopular, but the Quebecers seem oblivious to that at this point, because I pointed out that I don't want to get. I've pissed off Quebecers enough in the last couple of weeks. So the Bloc and the Liberals are formed an alliance on this one. But I wouldn't say it's permanent. I mean, right now it's been interesting. I mean, we know last week, right? The Conservatives and the other parties defeated the Liberals when it comes to well, there was an interesting one, right? Not defeated, but the was it Monday or when was it? The Conservatives presented a motion to have the principles of GC Canada Inc. pay back. You know, the Arrive scam guys?
Yeah.
The
GC Strategies, that was
the GC Strategies. So the Conservatives were successful in introducing a motion and passing the motion with the support of the NDP and the Bloc, saying that GC Industries should be forced to pay back $64 million.
And how did that go?
The motion passed. That's good. So the Liberals all had. So basically, the Liberals had to vote to let GC Industries keep the money. And the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Bloc voted for the money to be called back or recollected. It'll never happen because it's a non-binding motion. But it shows that we are in minority government territory, and the alliances are not formed at this point. They're happening on a case-by-case basis, which is interesting. Which is good for us. Which is good for us, like you said, because there's not a lot. Right now, there's five bills before the House of Commons. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it.
And they're not great ones, so Marty. There's some
C2
Trojan horses
sucks.
in there.
Yeah, C2 sucks. It's the let's make the border tighter. We talked about that one last week.
Yeah, and let's infringe on people's rights, privacy, and security, that kind of thing.
C4 was actually, we talked about there was talk about C4 today because the parliamentary budget, right? So whenever the government introduces a motion like this that involves money, the parliamentary budget officer is expected to study and see the financial impact. So in C4 is an act to make life more affordable for Canadians. That's basically the name of Bill C4. And the parliamentary budget officer costed out that bill. And the parliamentary budget officer said that if passed, tax filers, not Canadians, he said tax filers will save $90
a year.
Yeah.
Marty, what are you going to do with your $90?
That's a question I asked. Well, it's a nice bottle of scotch, or it's
almost a nice bottle of scotch. It's kind of a mediocre bottle of scotch.
Yeah, it's a one-way trip to Vancouver, but not a return trip, and I can't check a bag. It's one way on Flair Airline
with no bag. Yeah, with no bag.
No bag.
No carry-on either. It's just a jacket.
I shoot a fairly conventional firearm. Now that we talked about it, I shoot a 270 Winchester. So a box of 270s will cost me $50 for the cheap ones. Yeah, $90 for Bill C4.
Wow, you can get a box of those and maybe a box of 22s.
But I asked people, this isn't a save, by the way, right? Like, sure, it's a save to taxpayers. So Bill C4 might pass. And at the end of the year, when we file our taxes, the lower tax bracket goes from $15 to 15% to 14%. So we save $90. The parliamentary budget officer said that that's a loss of revenue of $7 billion to the federal government. But Ottawa will make up that. It's not like Ottawa is going to cut $7 billion of services. No. They lose $7 billion in revenue, and what are they going to do? They're going to borrow $7 billion somewhere else. So do we technically see a savings as taxpayers? No,
it's kicking the can down the road, as they always do.
Yeah, the government has to cut back its spending, and there's no sign of doing that. God, after the G7, actually, what's in it for Canada? Canada didn't get any good deals out of the G7, but I lost count. I think Volodymyr Zelensky, whatever his first name is, Ukraine Zelensky, he got $4.7 billion more from us. 4.7 billion. Yeah.
Because we got it. Because we got
yeah, oh yeah. Well, actually, now that's a segue into the Bank of Canada report. The Bank of Canada published its annual report. Finally, they tabled it on June 13th. Well, you know what June 13th is, right? It's the last
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. The Bank of Canada lost the value of the Bank of Canada's assets went down $40 billion, and they crystallized. They had an actual, I'm looking at the paper on my desk, they had a $2.86 billion loss for 2024, which adds to the $5.7 billion loss from 2023. And in there, it says the Bank of Canada hopes to return to profitability, but the losses do not impact the bank's ability to meet its mandates. I'm reading that going, oh my God, Tiff, bravo, nicely done. Like very, and then hidden in there, they gave themselves bonuses, and salaries of Bank of Canada employees went up 19%. Like I just,
what?
Yeah. Like it's, they don't even hide it. Clyde, they don't even hide it anymore. Like we lost $3 billion. Sorry, but we gave ourselves bonuses and we increased everybody's salaries. And this year's salaries are 19% higher than last year. So the Bank
they're the ones who they're the ones responsible for inflation. They should never get inflation adjusted anything, man. They should never get inflation adjusted anything.
They shouldn't. I agree.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I know. And actually, I barely had time to tweet about it. I need to go back and finish tweeting about it because it was on Friday and I was at the lake on Friday. So I was tweeting remotely. But
they were hoping everyone was at the lake on Friday with news like that. That's incredible.
Yeah. So,
man, the way people just keep failing upwards. They just keep failing upwards. It's holy. So what's happening to the yields on the bonds then? So like obviously creditors are going, no, I don't want any of that.
Well, like the Bank of Canada, don't quote me on this, but it issued like $230 billion worth of bonds last year. And then the interest rates are going down. And so that's, you and I talked about this. I mean, the Bank of Canada, the amount of money that the bank, like folks, when they issue a bond, then they use the bond as collateral to print money. That's what the Bank of Canada does. So, you know, it's convoluted, but Clyde says it all the time. Money machine go, brrr, that's it, right? The Bank of Canada, one way or another, is printing money. And they printed $400 billion last year. They added $400 billion, $400 billion of these worthless things. Like they're backed by nothing. This says it's worth $10. The bank issues it, but what the bank is hoping for is that when they call it back and bring it back, that the interest rate is a little bit higher and will have made at least not lost money. But the Bank of Canada is losing money by issuing bonds that are worthless in a declining interest rate market, when in fact the interest rate should be going up, but they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they need to keep people buying homes, and it's
the purchasers. Yeah. It's the purchasers of bonds that set the yield price, right? So if they're not buying it, they're going to demand more profitability on purchasing of a bond. So the yield goes up. They call it the yield because they don't want it to be conflated with interest rates, because that's the yield is more of a market interest rate on bonds, whereas the interest rate is fixed because the Bank of Canada uses inflated currency to adjust the interest rates. It's a scheme. It's a scheme. When our interest rates should be skyrocketing because there's not a lot of liquidity in the market, meaning there's not a lot of liquid money to go around. So people are like, you know, they want to borrow, but there isn't a lot available because we have the record low savings. Then the Bank of Canada has one tool. It can turn on the money printer, and there's a bunch of liquid assets. There's a bunch of money. But the problem with that is that money goes out into the market and it dilutes all the other dollars that are out there. And then you got to look at it like the old analogy is a piece of bread. The entire economy is a piece of bread. But if you just add more, you know, enumerations to that bread, you're just slicing each piece thinner. Yeah. That's it. And the problem is you bought a thick slice, and by the time you get it home, they've cut little slices off of it, and you got nothing at the end. So you put your money into the bank account and you let it sit there for 5 years, and there's an inflation rate of whatever. What's the inflation rate? They try to keep it at 3%. That's what their goal is. But that's 3%, not annualized. That's 3% per quarter. So that it compounds and it gets more and more and worse and worse. By the time you go to take the money out for 10 years, it's lost like 50, maybe more percent of its value. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so everything, I agree with everything you said, and we're going in the wrong direction on everything. I mean, and then Carney's is talking about cutting taxes, which is good, but he's borrowing on the backside, and he keeps making promises. I mean, like spending 5%, 2% of our GDP, that's money we don't have. Giving it to Ukraine, that's money we don't have. And it just goes on and on and on.
It's a tax. People, we got to remember that
inflation is a hidden tax. Yeah. And so, and people keep mentioning this. I mean, I was at the lake this weekend, so I went to the lake to sit with family. And nobody at the lake talked about climate change. Actually, they did talk about climate change. Everybody complained about how cold it is. We just had a month of June. We had a day in June last week. I think on Friday, I think this weekend that just passed, there wasn't a place across the country where the temperature was above 25 degrees Celsius. So everybody's talking about how cold it is. And, but everybody in my family talked about gasoline, food costs. Nobody can afford insurance. That's one of the big things that's creeping up on everyone. Vehicle costs, everything. It's all money, cost, and the things that need to be addressed are not being addressed, and that's why Donald Trump was bored and left, because Mark Carney and them want people to be distracted from the real problems that are faced by Canadians, and they talked about whatever, quantum and AI and climate change and all sorts of meaningless stuff, and no progress was done on anything significant. In fact, there was a whole bunch of people came visiting with their hand out, and he's just finished the G7, and now he's on his way to Europe for the European Union meetings. Like it's
they're so off on AI anyway. You know what the lesson that we need to be learning from AI is that they were totally wrong about what would happen. The people that are losing their jobs in AI are people that are white collar workers. Everybody that's losing their job is a white collar worker.
Yeah.
Get into the trades. You're not going to lose your job if you're in the trades. That's straight up. Trades workers are not going to lose their job. They're going to be the ones servicing all this AI crap. That's where we're at.
Actually, it's a perfect last thing to talk about. I see the clock there. We're running out of time, but there was this morning, it's related to this. Slightly good news. Canada published its first quarter population report.
Yes.
And the population only grew by 20,000 people in the first quarter. Miraculous. So literally the idea of shutting down the border, if I believe the government, it's happening. What I didn't get a chance to really dig into the numbers, I think they're changing what's in that population number. They're not including the non-permanent residents anymore. So I think that they might be playing games with the population numbers. But because the non-resident population is 2.1 million people. That's insane, man. And of that, there's 1.4 million non-resident people here on work visas alone. And check this out. Unemployment is 7% in the country right now. There's 20 million workers. So unemployment is 7%, which is 1.4 million workers. There's 1.4 million unemployed Canadians, but there also happens to be 1.4 million temporary non-resident people on a work visa here. Like when I look at the math, I'm like, the problems are all right there, folks. Like stop printing money, send these people back home and get people working. And I know some people don't want to work some of these jobs, but there are lots of jobs out there and we got to start taking those jobs. And those jobs will become attractive again if the government lowers our taxes and makes it okay to have to work.
They subsidize temporary workers. Temporary workers get $3 of their salary paid by the government.
Totally.
So they're outbidding Canadian workers by $3.
1.4 million workers. That's almost the Tim Hortons workforce, which is owned by, which not a lot of Tim Hortons are owned by Canadians. Well, they are owned by Canadians. I got to correct what I was saying. They're owned by Canadians, but they're owned by first generation Canadians that don't look like you and I. And then they own those Tim Hortons, and then they bring in temporary workers, and instead of paying them $15, you're right, they pay them $12.25 an hour, and the government kicks in the other $3.75, which is you and I. Yeah.
Which is, it's amazing that that's not headline news. Government is subsidizing unemployment.
Yep.
That's an economic rule, right? If you subsidize something, you're going to get more of it.
It's supply and demand. It's a magical formula that works, right? You can apply it to anything. If you can either mess with the supply or mess with the demand, and there's many ways. Some people can't wrap their minds around, like you and I know that if you lower the interest rates, you're basically adding demand to the housing market, and people go, how can that be adding demand? It's like, because by lowering the interest rate, you make it easier for somebody to borrow and qualify for a mortgage. And if somebody borrows and qualifies for a mortgage, they become somebody looking for a house, which is the demand side.
Not only that, you're disincentivizing them from putting it into savings.
Exactly.
Because the interest rate becomes lower than the inflation rate, and so they're losing money. So they're like, what do I do with my money? I better put it into a hard asset. And most people aren't savvy. They're not on the stock exchange. So they're like, how can I put it in real estate? Real estate's a good hard asset. I'll just put it into real estate. Yeah. And that's where everyone's been putting it for over a decade.
Well, I don't blame them, because the Bank of Canada, the governor of the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklin, basically said, hey, interest rates are going to be low for a long time, folks. Buy houses. I mean,
right,
he didn't even hide that. He's not supposed to say that, but he literally said it, like he encouraged people. Hey, interest rates are at an all-time low, Glenn. Remember that comment by Trudeau? Like,
historic lows.
Lows.
Canada is at historic lows, Marty. And where can people find you?
Find me on Marty Up North on Twitter, on X. Marty Up North on X. Come chat with me, folks. I'm energized again. I'm having a good time on X. There's topics to talk about.